Well, isn't this quite the mess of components? Everything that you see before me here, believe it or not, this is the Amstrad PC 2086. Yeah, it looks quite a bit different from the last time you've seen it. That's because I've had it in bits trying to do a bit of retro brightening. I was initially going to make a video showing the whole retro brightening process, but decided in the end that there's any amount of them out there on YouTube, so probably not really any point in me doing one as well. Although I did try and do all this a little bit different from my usual method. I tried the vapor brightening method, even built this rig for it. And I think it turned out not too bad. The keyboard for one, that definitely came out really well. That has brightened up considerably from what it was before. But in total, it maybe took about a week to get to this stage. So I'm going to try and put all this back together, but I'll pause along the way because there is a couple of little interesting bits and pieces that we can take a look at. Just in the middle of assembling the monitor. And yeah, last time when we looked at this, if you remember, the vertical was all squished on it. Slowly got better the longer that the monitor was left on. But that turned out to be a bad capacitor. At that point there, we fitted that new one cap, and in fact you can maybe still see the staining on the board from where the old cap had leaked. But that's all we did last time. We didn't recap the rest of the board. And as you can probably guess, considering that I'm in the middle of just reassembling this, well, I'm not going to go ahead and recap the rest of it. And that's because, to be honest with you, I don't really see the point. The rest of this does look fine. But one thing that I did want to do, the horizontal on it wasn't quite filling out the screen, and there's no control on the monitor for adjusting the horizontal. Well, no obvious control. There is obviously a control on the PCB here for doing it. And from what I understand from the comments of the previous video, it is this coil here. We would need to adjust this from that point on top of it. That should change the width of the image on the screen. Now, I do need a specialist tool to do that with, and I did buy such a thing, just it's been months and I'm not really sure where I've put it. So let me go ahead and reassemble the rest of this, then I'll try and find that tool and we'll have a go at adjusting the width. Well, scratch that idea, because I did find the tool, and yeah, I suppose the only thing special about it is that it's made of plastic. And that, I suppose, is for my safety because there is quite a bit of current running through this while the monitor is live. But this doesn't have the right end on it. Now, there's nothing there for that sort of flat-headed screwdriver end on this to grip hold of. So that ain't going to work. Need to have another think about that. So we'll maybe try and come back to that later. But in the meantime, I'll just continue with all this assembly. The motherboard's been kept in this anti-static bag, so hopefully it'll all be fine. But one thing we're going to do once we're finished the assembly is throw a couple of upgrades at this. One such upgrade being a new CPU. That'll come in the flavour of an NEC V30. The original chip in here is an 8086. Now, no doubt you've heard of the 8088 CPUs being replaced with the likes of an NEC V20. The whole idea there being that at the same clock frequency, the V20 is more efficient than the 8088. Well, it's the same thing here. The V30 is to the 8086 what the V20 is to the 8088. This has some additional instructions in it. I think it's those in particular from the 186 processor. Plus it is just a more efficient chip that can complete more instructions per clock cycle. And it just goes to show you how long it's been since I've even looked at this, because I thought we would need to fit a new socket, but no, the original CPU is in a socket. Now, I'm not going to swap the chip over just yet. First of all, I want to reassemble everything just to make sure that it all still works as it was. But since I do currently have the soldering iron on, let's just put that to the side. because one thing that we definitely do need to do is remember the old hard drive. Well, it needs a new tantalum fitted and a new inductor. If you remember last time we were working on this machine, well, it wouldn't start, and that's because something was shorted. We traced that back to a tantalum that was shorted at this point. Now, to get it up and running again, I fitted this electrolytic, but it's not meant to be one of those. It's meant to be a tantalum, so we've got the new capacitor to replace that. But there also seemed to be damage to this inductor here, just at that point there on the side of it. It almost looks like it's been burnt. So we've got a replacement for that as well. Alright, let's get the new inductor fitted. There's no polarity on this, it can just go in anyway. And let's get the new tantalum fitted. These do have a polarity, and the difference on these compared to, say, an electrolytic, well, the stripe on these, or the line on the package there, that represents the positive on a tantalum. On an electrolytic, it would be the negative. So that's that done. I'll just tidy it up with a little bit of IPA and cotton bud, and then on with the assembly. Well, it's finally starting to look a bit more like a PC again. I haven't bothered putting the top cover on just yet, because obviously we're going to throw a few upgrades at it. But just before we do that, let's just make sure this all still works. So monitor on first, and then computer on. Please wait. Well, that's a good sign. It does seem to be starting up. At least the monitor still works. Accessing the hard drive. So that's still working. But it's making very unhappy noises. Check key lock switch, keyboard and mouse. That is referring to this thing. And unfortunately, out of everything here, the one thing I cannot find is the key. I stupidly must have locked this, then taken the key out. In the unlocked position, the key is captive within it. You know, the key won't come out. But I have stupidly locked it, taken the key out, put it somewhere really safe. And in the last few months, I've forgotten where that really safe place is. So I wonder, in the meantime, if we just disconnected the wires that are coming from that to the motherboard, would that solve our problem? Okay, it's this wire here. Let's pull that one off. Hopefully that solves the problem. But let's just leave everything balancing like that and try it. Does sound promising. I heard the hard drive seek. Just the one beep this time. And it's booting. Fantastic. We're back in MS-DOS version 3.3. So let me tidy all this up again. I'll go ahead and just put the lid on, and we can set the monitor on top of that, just to get all this a bit more compact for recording. And then we're going to do a fresh factory install of the original software. Well, it's all back together and looking pretty. I even put 4 new AA batteries in here to maintain the system date and time. While putting it back together though, I thought it's a bit of a shame that we have this sort of nick in the front here, just on the hard disk sticker. And same over here, this sticker is looking a bit tatty as well. But then I noticed something. It might be 36 years later than Amstrad had intended, but that's this machine finally unpacked. And speaking of that, let's power it up and get it restored to its original factory state. I found disk images of the original 2086 backup discs that would have shipped with this machine. I found them over on a site that I'd never heard of before, vitusabandonware.com. I'll leave a link to this down in the video's description, but it does seem like a very useful site for old DOS applications, so definitely worth checking out if you are looking for something obscure. But how are we going to factory reset this machine? Well, as you can see, it has booted to MS-DOS version 3.3. So let me sort out that command prompt. And one thing that I think is quite interesting is if we take a look at the contents of this disk drive, all those files there, they are very similar to the contents of the hard drive. Well, barring the extra couple of folders there associated with WordStar. But beyond that, I mean, all of those files there, they certainly look to be exactly the same as what's on that disk. So, suggests to me that someone in the past has at least had disk 1 of the Amstrad disk set and has formatted the hard drive, because originally this would have had Windows 2 on it. But someone has formatted the hard drive and just copied over the contents of that disk 1. I did notice while creating these disks that Windows is on these. So hopefully we can work our way through all of these and get a complete system restoration. So I think we should just start with an HD format. Well, that took quite a while, but it was a lot more automated than I was expecting. Has it even created a C drive for us? Is there a partition there that we can access? Yes, there is. I would assume it's blank. It doesn't seem too happy. Okay, file not found. Took it forever to do that. But look, let's just give it the benefit of the doubt, because it's all an Amstrad PC with all the original components, and this is the original Amstrad restoration disc, or a copy of it, but you know what I mean. So let's just push on. Next thing to do is install MS-DOS 3.3. So how do we do that? Well, it's not just as easy as typing install. Rather, for this, we type select. Now, I've never done this before. I've never installed MS-DOS 3.3 before, so this is as much a learning curve for me as it might be for you. Do you want to continue? Yes. Incorrect number of parameters. Okay, after a little bit of Googling, it seems we need to run select A drive, C drive. No, we don't. Select is used to install DOS the first time. Select erases everything on the specified target and then installs DOS. Okay. Select C. Incorrect number of parameters. Okay, I found an MS-DOS 3.3 manual, so I was almost right with this. It's select A drive and then C drive, and we want to specify the location of where we're going to copy the files, which will be a DOS directory. But we then also need to give it a country code and a keyboard code. And I would assume the country code would be 044, and then the keyboard code is UK. Well, certainly doing something this time. It's going to format the C drive for us. So let's do that. No doubt this will take a while. I'll be back once it's finished. Well, we have got a problem. Format failure. And it's not really giving us any indication of why it failed. Although the drive was making some rather unhealthy sounds there. So maybe this old hard drive is on its way out. Let's try that again, will we? Well, unfortunately it failed again. I wonder, should we maybe try running Fdisk first? So here's a thought. We can see that the total disk space is 614 cylinders. But it always fails the format when it gets up to about 590 something. So how about we delete that partition, and then create a new partition, but this time rather than using the full size of the disk, let's limit it to say 580. We'll make that partition active. Let's restart and try to format again. So run our select command again. It has now successfully formatted the drive. System has been transferred and it wants a volume label. Amstrad. And yeah, we do have some bad sectors still on the drive, even though we have reduced the overall size of it. That's how many bytes free we have. So 31,066,24. If we divide that by 1024 and divide it by 1024, well, we have 28.7 megabytes free on that drive. So yeah, it's meant to be 30 megabytes. We've got 28.7. We've only lost just over 1 megabyte. I think we can live with that. And is that it? As I say, I've never done this before, but let's just eject the disk, reset, and see if it now boots to the hard drive. And yeah, that seems to have booted okay, although that prompt still isn't set up right. Let me adjust the auto-exec.bat. There's no edit. But we do have this program, RPED, and that will let us edit files. And it's the auto-exec.bat that we want to edit. In fact, I don't really need to know what date and time it is when the machine boots up, so we can get rid of that. And in there I will put prompt $P$G. And then we'll leave the clear screen and we'll put the version in as well. Just because I like to see that when the machine does boot. Escape to save, F4 to quit, Control Alt and delete. And yeah, that's now looking a lot better. So let's swap out to disk 2, because that one contains the Windows installer. And I think it's just setup. Set a program for Microsoft Windows version 2. When we're ready, press enter. We will install to the Windows directory. We have a PC with built-in VGA graphics and mouse. It is a built-in VGA video graphics array. We have a UK keyboard, mouse. This is where things are going to get interesting, because this thing uses its own bespoke mouse. And just while I've got this in my hand, anyone who's seen the last video, the mouse was missing. I since picked this up from eBay, although it was missing the ball and the trapdoor here on it. So I 3D printed that thing, and the ball that you see there is just a bouncy ball, but it is heavy enough that I do think it will work okay. But I think for the purposes of this, I'm going to have to select other. And for the mouse driver is actually on disk 1. In fact, that mouse driver is currently in that DOS folder on the C drive, but let's just try and read it off the disk, because it wants to read it from the A drive there. I'm not sure if I need to specify what the actual device driver is. It's just mouse.com, but let's just see what this does. First of all, press enter. And yeah, okay, I think that's now right. And it wants us to put the setup disk back in. Okay, I think that's us done. Not too worried about the readme file. So we'll just press F to finish. And we can put in the Windows just by typing Win. Microsoft Windows version 2.03. Awesome. Do we have a mouse? Yes. How cool is this? I have never seen Windows version 2 in the flesh before. I can't wait to show this to my son tomorrow, because you have no idea how much he's into all this sort of stuff. He will love looking through this. Not that it seems that there is very much to see, because it does really just seem to be this file browser. So I think you'll agree that the camera does a pretty poor job of trying to record the CRT. So let's jump over to a direct capture. And what secrets does Windows version 2 hold? Well, this seems to be a list of executables within the Windows directory, so presumably Windows executables. We have your calculator, fairly standard affair. A calendar, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. Card file. I would imagine this is just like an address book. Yep, that seems to be exactly what it is. The clock. And yeah, that time is correct. It has just gone 13 minutes past 11. Control. Is this our control panel? It is indeed. So we can adjust the cursor blink speed, the double click speed, add a printer, add a new font, set up the comms port, or we can change colors, border width, warning beep, mouse settings, or country settings. All fairly standard stuff, to be honest. CVT paint. What's this? Oh, convert paint. Well, I have nothing to convert. I wonder what that does though. Does that maybe convert different file formats, image file formats? Do this .text. What is this? A to-do list that someone has wrote. Do you get a standard to-do list as part of your Windows 2 installation? Priority A, take car in for a tune-up and schedule a vacation. I am struggling a little bit with our mouse here. It is fighting me. I just want to click close. I may have to revisit the ball idea. That mightn't be heavy enough. MS-DOS, presumably that just dumps us into DOS Notepad for typing notes. And then a Paint package. Paint. This must be one of the first versions of Paint. Fantastic stuff. Oh, the mouse is fighting me. But you get the idea anyway. Don't think we need to save that. PIF edit. What does that do? Program Information Editor. So do you have to manually set up how Windows deals with other executables? You're going to be entering the name, title, any parameters for the program, the startup directory for it, its memory requirements, what the program directly modifies, the program switch, screen exchange, close window on exit. Definitely never had to do anything like that before, but I suppose I've never used this early a version of Windows before. There's another executable there. Reversey. Oh, it's a game. Spooler, I'm assuming that's for the printer. Terminal, well, I'm assuming that's a terminal. Pretty self-explanatory. And then we're down here to write.exe. I would assume this is more a word processor. Something with a few more features than Notepad. I'm writing this on my Amstrad 2086 PC. So that seems to be the extent of Windows. But we can go back to the root C directory, and you can see I have stuck a few extra bits and pieces on here. If we, for example, go into the benchmarks folder, then we've got LM60. Can I run this from within Windows? So cannot find lm60.pif. So that'll come back to that other bit of software, that PIF edit. So if I want to run those DOS applications from within Windows, I must need to set up PIF file for it. We'll maybe try doing that later. Well, for now, I do want to run the benchmark. So let's just dump out of Windows, back into DOS, browse to the LM60 folder, and let's see how this thing performs. And there we have it, in its standard flavor. Confirms the CPU type is an Intel 8086, running at just a shade under its 8 MHz, but this computer performs like a 5 MHz AT, and our video performance there is 473.3 characters per millisecond. Now we do have another benchmark in here. And yes, we are being very optimistic trying to run this. But it does have VGA graphics. So it should be able to at least run this, the VGA benchmark. But yeah, it's running about as fast as I expected. This might take a while. And yes, that took forever. Although the score of 1.1 frames per second probably explains why. But in fairness to the Amstrad, it did finish it. It'll be interesting to see though when we move over to the V30 if those benchmarks improve. But how about a real life example as well? So in the games folder, I do have a few things installed here, but I think what might be the best one to show you is Stunt Car Racer. And this game is from around the same era as this machine being 1988. And I think this game might be 89. And let's go. I keep forgetting that this game auto accelerates. All you really have to do is steer, or you can boost, or if you want to slow down, you can push up or down. But as you can hopefully see, this game actually does run really well on this machine in its stock form. But it is very much one of those games that is speed sensitive to the CPU, so it will be interesting to see if when we move to the V30 if it does get any smoother. Uh-oh. Oh, managed to hold it. I thought I was going over the edge there. That's us. Not sure we'll finish with a crash. And then one other game, just to look at quickly, which installed itself on the root of the C drive for some reason. Monkey Island. It's all running nice and smooth there. That's all good. But then when it's asked to scroll, you can see the frame rate drop. In the bar then, let's just try and make our way through to the power leaders at the back. So again, things are quite slow when it's trying to scroll, and if we try to walk while it's scrolling, things get even slower again. You definitely could play the game like this, but it will be interesting to see if that V30 makes any difference. Getting to the CPU does require the machine to be stripped down quite a bit. You need to remove the PSU, or certainly move it out of your way. But I think we can forgive Amstrad of that one. It's not like you were going to be in here every day doing this. So we'll get our Intel 8086 out of the way, our AMD branded Intel chip, and let's try and drop in the V30 in its lovely ceramic package. It looks brand new. Those legs certainly don't look like they've ever been inserted in anything before. Although those legs in particular, and maybe that one, yeah, a few of them actually, they look like they've been refinished. So we'll stick this in here. And just while everything is balancing as it is, let's try and power it on quickly, just to make sure that the machine still posts. Yeah, and it does. Away it goes. Now it's not going to boot because I don't have the hard drive card in place, but yeah, it is looking for a system disk. I think we'll be safe enough to go ahead and just reassemble. Now, I did say we were going to drop in a couple of upgrades, plural. So along with that CPU, I'm going to stick in this sound card, a Resound 2 OPL3, 8-bit ISA 2-channel OPL3 sound card, OPL2 compatible, preset to IO388H. So that is going to go in there. But I do have one more expansion here with the cover removed, and that's going to be for this. An XT IDE card with CF interface. This will come in very handy, especially considering the condition of that existing hard drive and the fact that it might be on the way out. And that brings me nicely to one gripe that I have with this case, other than the fact that it is 100% plastic. To access those expansion slots, you need to leave this cover off, almost ruining the aesthetic of it, and leaving a rather sharp, rather long screw there for you to catch your finger on. Then again, I suppose it wouldn't be a computer of this era if there wasn't something to take the skin off your fingers while you're working on it. But I do think if I had have owned a machine like this back in the day, what I would have been very tempted to do would be for the likes of a sound card like that. I probably would have drilled a hole in the side of this so that I could have had that back on the case and just had the wire poking through. We're not going to go to that extreme today though, so don't worry about that. And before I go sticking any CF cards in there, let's just power the machine up and we'll try those benchmarks and those couple of games again. Right, here we go, benchmarks. Let's start with LM60. is it going to be any faster? And yes, it is. So it does correctly identify our CPU as an NEC V30, but this time our computer performs like a 7 MHz AT. And the video performance has also increased ever so slightly, now up to 558.86 characters per millisecond. So that is definitely a result. Our NEC V30 is working and it is making things slightly faster. And yes, as laughable as it is, let's just try 3D Bench again. Could it be any faster than 1.1 frames per second? Well, it does actually appear faster straight away there, but let's leave it for 5-6 minutes and find out. 1.5 frames per second. Yeah, it's faster. It's faster. It was 1.1 before. So it's an improvement. It is an improvement. And yeah, I suppose it does fall in line with the same sort of percentage improvement that we've seen in LM60. Will there be any noticeable difference in Stunt Car Racer though? It did run fine before, but will it run any better? Still just using the PC speaker. I sort of half expected ad-lib sounds. Then again, not sure if this game actually supports ad-lib sounds. Although I might need to apply a switch to the executable when starting it. So yeah, it does seem to be just running pretty much the same as it was before. Or is it slightly faster? I'm not sure, to be honest. I will have to put the two of them side by side to get a better feel for it. It may be slightly more smooth here. It is running fantastic though. I'm actually very surprised how well this runs. You know, on our 8 MHz chip, I've overshot that. You know, 8 MHz chip. Similar speed to the Amiga 500. This game runs nothing like this on an Amiga 500. It's not a slideshow by any means, but it is nowhere near this smooth. But this is finished. Let's end with a crash again. Proper wreck. Yeah, I am really impressed by how well that game runs on this machine. I genuinely did not expect it to be that smooth. But let's try Monkey Island again. Yes, we should be able to get the ad-lib sounds out of it, but I'm not going to enable that. I'm going to purposely run this again, like last time, with EGA graphics and with just the internal speaker sounds. And that's just so that we're getting a fair comparison, because running the ad-lib sounds does add some additional load to the CPU. So again, we'll just skip through to the approach to the scum bar. Okay, is there going to be any noticeable difference in the scrolling? And yeah, that definitely is a lot smoother. So our little CPU upgrade is indeed doing its job. And what about when we go to the part leaders? If we walk while it's scrolling, yeah, okay, things do slow down again there, but definitely not as bad as it did last time. So our little V30, yeah, it has definitely made the difference. Although I'm not quite sure what a chip like that would have cost you back in the day. And would it have made enough difference Yeah, it is making things faster, but is it making it so much faster that it would have been worth the outlay to buy that chip and fit it to your Amstrad? Did anyone have this machine or similar back in the day and carry out that modification? Did anyone fit a V30? And if you did you think it was worthwhile? These days though, yeah, I would say it's definitely worthwhile doing, because that replacement chip, I think it cost me about £5. And for that extra sort of 20% performance, yeah, it's definitely worth it for that. Of course, now that we have run Monkey Island, you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to change it to VGA graphics, and we're going to have to change it to ad-lib audio. Well, let's having a good old think about this. In fact, that's just crashed the machine. A number lock key is currently on, and it's staying on. It's not switching. It's crashed. An error. External ROM checksum incorrect. It maybe seems that our Amstrad here doesn't like that XT IDE card. Let me remove that. I just inserted this as it was, but it may well be the case that we need to set the jumpers on this. Of course, begs the question, why did it work the first time we tried it? And yeah, okay, we have booted again. So let's just try that again, will we? Monkey Island, VGA and ad-lib. And there's our ad-lib sound. Which I must say sounds fantastic. Yeah, it is a very short demonstration for that sound card. I haven't used that before today. But what I'm hearing here sounds spot on. I can't fault it. In fact, I've got headphones on at the minute, so I'm listening to this quite closely. And yeah, it sounds perfect. Out of interest though, what does this do to the whole smoothness of the game in terms of that scrolling? I would expect things to slow down a bit here, just because we're now running VGA graphics, but also because the CPU is having to deal with the ad-lib audio. Although granted, there's no audio for most of this game, but you know what I mean. And okay, maybe a little slower, but still perfectly playable. There is ad-lib music in the bar though, that's right, I forgot about that. So what's it going to be like now? And you know what, that is fine. Yeah, I honestly can't fault that at all. It is definitely slower when it's trying to scroll there, without a doubt. But otherwise it is fine. Very much playable. And you gotta love that soundtrack, don't you? It's absolutely classic. I mean, I know this game supports the external MIDI devices for sound and whatnot, but I think it's one of those titles that just sounds right under ad-lib, you know what I mean? Yeah, it sounds better with the MIDI and whatnot, but I don't know, it just, to me, it sounds right with this ad-lib music. Any noticeable difference in Windows? I mean, everything in here, I suppose, was running reasonably well before. But I wonder, was it any quicker there opening that paint package? I mean, I can't really tell just by loading it there myself. But let's compare it side by side. Opening the paint package under the 8086 and opening it under the V30. Well, at least the channel initials were easier to draw this time. While we're in here though, let's have a play with that PIF thing. So there's one of the programs there, one of the Amstrad programs, the VGA test. Remember we ran this last time when looking at this machine. It's basically just a test suite for the onboard graphics adapter. And if I tried to run it there, it says cannot find VGA test.pif. So if we go to the PIF editor, and let's try and create a file for that DOS application. So program name, VGA test. Program title, I suppose, is VGA test as well. There's no parameters that I'm aware of. The initial directory is DOS. I honestly have no idea of how much memory it requires. 52K seems to be the standard amount there. I don't know, let's double it, will we? We'll give it 104. This software modifies the screen, but it's obviously also going to have to modify the contents of the memory. It uses the keyboard as well. It is a graphics application. So we'll select those and close window on exit. Suppose we'll do that. Does that maybe close Windows as the program loads? So let's try and save that as... I can't select a directory. We'll save that as VGA test. No valid program name. I wonder for program name, do I need to specify where the program is? No, it's not there. It's in the DOS directory. Do I need to do that? Yeah, okay, that has saved that. Let's now go to that DOS directory and try to load that VGA test. Cannot run with other applications. Let's take a look at an example PIF file for 123. I assume that's Lotus 123. And okay, there's the program name, the program title. Obviously it isn't installed on this machine, so there's no directory information. This program requires 256K of RAM. It desires 640. Directly modifies just the screen. You would have thought, software like that would modify the contents of memory. Program switch is text only, screen exchange, graphics and text, and close window and exit. That is checked. How about we copy those sort of parameters into R1? Required is 256. Desired is all of it. We'll untick that. We'll untick that. And we'll change that to text. Will it work now? Yeah, it's doing something. And there it is. Yes, it has loaded the VGA test. Now, as we looked at this last time, this allows you to test 5 different graphics modes that the onboard adapter supports. CGA, EGA, VGA, MCGA, and PVGA. I suppose the real question is now, if I exit this program, will it take us back into Windows? I mean, you would expect it to. And there it goes. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, that PIF file, that does sort of remind me of an icon file associated with an Amiga executable. Although before now, it's something that I have never seen before. under Windows. Although granted, I've never used Windows version 2. So let's finish off with another look at this monitor. Yes, I needed a plastic tool to try and adjust this horizontal. That one's no good, but then I remembered I've got a 3D printer, so just print out the tool that you need. And we will have a go at adjusting this width in a second. But the monitor itself, yeah, this thing, out of everything associated with our Amstrad, this is showing its age the most. Back in the last video when we looked inside this initially, it was full of that sort of soot that you get inside these things. This is definitely a high R unit. I currently have the brightness and the contrast knobs set to their midpoint, but as I hope you can see through the flickering image, and apologies for that, there's just nothing I can do with it with my camera. But hopefully you can see on the screen here that we've got a very defined edge of the image. With that contrast and brightness knob in the middle, the screen is definitely being driven way too hard. I think I need to turn that brightness down to about that point, so that the black level here in the middle of the screen matches that black off to the side where the image is not being drawn. But in doing that, the text, well, that should be white. And while the camera does compensate for it a fair bit, to my eye, that is grey. Now I can try to turn up the contrast so that we can get that sort of white again. I need to take it to about there to get it to a nice bright level, but as you can see, that is blowing out the image. So about as far as I think I can push it is about that. The monitor also seems to have some minor problems with convergence, because just at the top of MS-DOS there and at the top of version, I can see some red. And then on the left hand side of the M and the C, I can see a little bit of blue. Now I'm not sure if that is an age related thing, or if it's just maybe the budget nature of this monitor itself. But it is less than ideal and just goes to further compound the issues that this thing has. But shall we have a go at adjusting that width anyway? I think to give us a full screen image, what we'll do is just boot into Windows. And in fact, I still think I'm driving the monitor too hard, because in Windows here, that is quite blurry. I need to bring that contrast down to about there. That's the text nice and sharp now, but the screen is incredibly dull. Shall we see if there's anything we can do about this width though? And as I said before, it is this thing that we need to adjust. And is this making any difference? Not really. It is making a little bit of difference there if I unscrew that coil, but it's making very little really. I think that's about as far as I dare unscrew that, and it hasn't really made any difference at all. But the top of that screw now inside that is more or less level with the top of the plastic shroud, and I don't want to unscrew it any further. So it seems that's just about as good as we're going to be able to get it. Well, that's the Amstrad PC 2086-30 all back together. It's had its retro brightening, we have restored the software back to its factory state, and we've even thrown a few upgrades at it. That NEC V30 CPU, the OPL sound card, and the XT IDE card, which by the way I did get sorted. The reason that it crashed the system before was that it had the wrong ROM on it. I had a 386 ROM on it. This most definitely is not one of those. So just reflashed it with the XT ROM and it's fine. Although because I'm running DOS 3.3, I'm still limited to just a 30 megabyte hard drive on that CF card. Despite the fact that CF card itself is 1 gigabyte in size, I can only use 30 megabytes of it. But even at that, it's enough to transfer some more software across onto this machine, save us having to use those double density disks. Speaking of which, one possible upgrade might be to change that disk drive for a high density drive. And the reason I say that is because I was looking up details of the drive that plugs into the expansion on the other side of the machine there. That is for an external floppy drive, and it talks about a high density drive that you can connect there. So the floppy controller in here must support high density disk drives, and I definitely think it would be worthwhile swapping out that one so that we can use those 1.44 megabyte disks. Or I suppose we could just put a second internal drive. It would go over on that other side where the case badge is. And in terms of other possible future plans, well, there is that other 8-bit ISA slot in there. And you know me, I can't leave a slot like that empty, so we'll have to put something together to stick in there. I do have a memory card that might give us some additional RAM. It's an EMS RAM card, so we can maybe look at putting that together, dropping that in here, and that might open up the door to some more applications. And I suppose the thing that brings me back to is that I am still quite surprised just how well this thing performs. Now the 8086 is obviously a 16-bit CPU, and this machine, it falls into the same family of other Amstrads. They have more in the PC 80 range. This is the 8086, but there's the 8286 and 8386. Obviously those machines, the 286 and 386, they have 16-bit ISA slots in them, and in fact I think the case might be slightly deeper, as I think those machines might have more than just 3 expansion slots. But one thing this machine does share in common with them is that the RAM in here, it does sit on a 16-bit data bus, or well, I think it does anyway. And that might go some way to explain the performance that we're seeing out of this. Because I didn't expect Stunt Car Racer to work just as well as it does. And I have tried a couple of other similar sort of games from the time period. Indianapolis 500, that's another 3D style racing sim, and as you can see, it also runs really well. Although granted that is in the low quality settings, but still, this is an 8 MHz 8086, or well, V30 now, but you know what I mean. So Amstrad's XT clone, it might not just be built as well as the IBM originals. This is all plastic after all, but I cannot help but be impressed with what's going on inside there. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, putting it all back together and everything we've done to it. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Let me know what you think we should do in terms of the floppy drive and in terms of that other 8-bit ISA slot. Should I put together an EMS memory card to stick in there, or is there anything else you could recommend? Let me know down in the comments, but I think that'll do us for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.